Welcome to the Transform Your Wealth and Health podcast, where experts in wealth, health, and fitness help transform your life. Here's your host, Andy Arter.
He's a super fit, ripped 50-something who's a successful entrepreneur and business and body transformation coach. Today's guest is Diksesh Patel. Diksesh, how are we doing?
Yes, Andy, thanks very much for having me today. I really appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to talking about my journey with you today.
Oh, me too, mate. Me too. We've been trying to set this up for a while. What mishaps have we had along the way? I'm not even going to tell people, but several have befell us until we're here tonight recording. So I am looking forward to it. Don't worry.
Well, definitely COVID's not going to stop us today, I think.
No, that's not even going to stop us. No, nothing like that. Okay. So listen, we're going to go into all sorts in the podcast, but give us a little feel for your background and the kind of upbringing you had in the past.
Yeah, it's a great question. My sort of background, I sort of take it back to my childhood years. I grew up on a council estate in a place in northwest London in Willesden.
Oh, near me, not far.
Not far, yeah. It's I would say, quite a character-building environment for a young Indian family, if I may
Yeah.
say. Really puts life into perspective when you're growing young. So one of the early things that when I grew up, I just decided that we needed to get ourselves out of here, and that's where I started off on my educational journey. Unbeknownst to a lot of my teachers, I actually put LSE down as the number one choice. Not one person gave me a cat in hell's chance. With the demographic, ex-council, living in a council house for over 15 to 20 years, very little money, mum and dad from a background working in a factory, not a cat in hell's chance. But do you think I proved them wrong? Absolutely.
Well done. Absolutely. So LSE, London School of Economics.
London School of Economics, yeah. So super proud of that. First one in my family to hit the university.
Oh, absolutely. Now, do you know what? We had one lad from our school year in Tottenham School that went to university. It just wasn't, as you were saying, it just wasn't in us. We wasn't expected to do it. So, yeah, I know what you mean. That's a great achievement. Well done.
Thank you.
So, delve into it a little bit more then.
Yeah.
What was the family like? Were they entrepreneurs? Were they doing anything particular?
Most of the, my mum and dad were really hard-working labourers. When they first landed from East Africa, my dad landed with about £100 in his pocket back then in the early 70s, and within 48 hours he hit a red London bus for the very first time, and actually it got pickpocketed. To put things put things in perspective, £100 in 1973. That's a lot of money. I don't even know how far back to go in that, but that's probably likely to be a good 12 months' salary back in those days, especially for a labourer.
Wow!
And he always told that story. In real money, he came here with nothing, and three little children, 3-year-old, 2-year-old, and 10 months old, didn't speak hardly a word of English. Didn't know what he was expecting. I don't know how he did it, to be honest. He's a stronger man than I am. Don't know if I could upheave in the way he did. But to be fair to him, I think that sort of set us on a path of developing. He developed 3 children with character. Bit of street wiseness. Sometimes we forget that in today's world, especially with my 2 boys. So accelerated past that. I mean, I saw them, them growing up in their early 30s with 3 young kids. Working in a factory. No easy thing like fixing light bulbs. Or my dad used to work in the old Hoover building up in.
I know the one. Yeah, on the A40.
That's the one. That's the one that's at Tesco now, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so he worked there for a fair bit of time, and I think because I was the oldest of 3 siblings, but my mum and dad would always push education. But I think with the younger two, that it was quite tough, especially in the sort of neighbourhood that we both grew up in, and it wasn't easy. So I just thought, I've got to find a way of breaking through the sound barrier, so to speak. Ended up at LSE. Remember when I first sort of came out of there, thinking, yeah, this feels good, and went straight into a corporate career, and eventually ended up in investment banking, which for
R-
me is phenomenal. So I spent a good 25 years in investment banking,
Wow.
starting off as a programmer in technology, and then worked all the way through. Ended up being a portfolio project and program manager. And I actually left about 3 years ago. It's a pretty successful career. And I decided that, I wanted to sort of go into business full time. I did a bit of a dabble some 10, 12 years ago before cutting and running after the post Lehman's era.
Hmm.
So, funnily enough, in today's era, especially with the world in lockdown, I see a lot of the similar signs from that post Lehman's era 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I learned a hell of a lot that I'm implementing in today's market.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's been exciting.
So when you decided 3 years ago that you was going to do something different, what was it to do, and what inspired you to do that?
It's a great question. And I always enjoyed property and real estate. I mean, I bought my first buy to let in the early 90s. And back in those days, how did people do it? They used to uh, work, save up a bit of money, then buy something, then you run out of cash, and then 6 years later you buy another one. And it was slowly built up. Myself, my brother, and within the family, and I always had an inkling for that. And it was around about 6 years ago, actually, whilst I was still working. I think back then I was probably with either HSBC or Credit Suisse. Um, I decided that I actually wanted to make a go of this and scale it up in a way that I could do it where funding wasn't the issue. And I started embarking on working with private investors and clients to help grow the business. And I actually started the business while I was working for a period of about 2 to 3 years. So
Hmm.
that period was quite challenging because I ended up almost like two full time roles. So I was literally putting in about 70 to 80 hours back then. And eventually I decided that actually one or the other has to give. Either I'm going to take this business seriously, or it'll just be something average, which is something I didn't want. So
No.
I decided to quit, put myself in a good position and platform financially, and off I went.
Did you have enough money coming in then to pack the job in and it would be equal, or did you take a leap of faith?
Well, that's a great question. What I actually did was I was actually in the last period of time while I was working in investment banking, I was actually consulting.
Hmm.
So effectively, I was pretty much self-employed. So what I'd done was built up a really good war chest that allowed me to continue to draw down salary even after I disappeared. So that gave me a good 2 year runway, as I call it,
Yeah.
until the business started propagating, uh, efficiently in terms of being able to draw down an income or profits.
Now, I know a little bit about this because we spoke earlier, but who helped you along the way? You don't have to name the name, but type of people that helped you.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think in order to answer that question, I have to go slightly deeper.
Yeah.
Um, I had to fix myself first, my mindset, because in the early years, I suspect I attracted and manifested um, the wrong kind of people with the wrong kind of values, mainly
Mm.
because I didn't know who I was as an individual. So I embarked on a journey of self discovery.